the coronavirus that we thought didn't hurt kids, it turns out it very much does hurt some kids. Now, when we discussed this last week on the program, there were 16 kids in New York who'd presented with this condition. Well, now there's 85 kids, and as you say, 3 of them have died. One was a 5-year-old, one was in primary school, and one was an adolescent. This is hitting everybody hard. Listen to the governor of New York as he speaks about this on Mother's Day.
You want to talk about Mother's Day? This is every mother's nightmare. This is every parent's nightmare. No one knew about it. Nobody was watching for it. You know, it's the same story of this virus from day one. The virus has been ahead of us every step of the way. And now we thought that it wasn't affecting children, and now we find out it may be affecting children.
So that governor, Andrew Cuomo from New York, says that the one common denominator between all these 85 kids is that they either have or they have had the coronavirus. And so what's happening is they're getting the coronavirus and then they're presenting with these symptoms that are like toxic shock, or this syndrome called the Kawasaki disease. Their bodies come up with rashes, their extremities start swelling and turning red, there can be vomiting, there can be diarrhea. But like I said, the one common denominator is the coronavirus. And as the governor says, these kids are not presenting with a respiratory illness. So it's not like they're coming in and struggling to breathe. So doctors are virtually having to go around about and in through the back door to diagnose these cases as COVID related. And so now the Center for Disease Control, the national authority, is flying to New York and is looking into all 85 of these cases. The one thing we thought they couldn't touch is our most precious asset, our children. It turns out this disease is beginning to touch our children.
Michael, before the weekend, we learned that the president's valet became COVID positive, but now someone else in the White House is sick too.
Yes, well, that's exactly right. So we learned at the end of last week that the president's valet, a US Air Force member who attends to very close personal matters to the president and the First Lady, had tested positive for COVID. Well, on Friday afternoon, the vice president, who heads the coronavirus task force, was about to take off in Air Force Two when 5 or 6 of his staff had to be deplaned, had to be taken off the plane. Why? Because another staffer, the vice president's press secretary, had tested positive for coronavirus. Now, these were staffers who she'd recently been in contact with, Katie Miller. So they had to be pulled off. Others have had to be, have had to self-quarantine. Her husband, Katie Miller's husband, is President Trump's senior advisor on immigration policy. And as a result, because as I said, the vice president heads the coronavirus task force. So his press secretary is intimately involved with the operations of that task force. Well, as a result, the head of the National Center for Disease Control has had to go into self-quarantine. The public face of the president's coronavirus task force, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has had to go into a form of self-quarantine. And the head of the Food and Drug Administration, the organization that's approving or rushing to approve these tests and these machines and these new therapies, has had to go into self-quarantine. So that's how significant that the fact that the coronavirus has crept into the White House is. And if you now compare that to, is the White House now a safe workplace? People working at abattoirs and meat processing plants here, the president passed an executive order, said abattoirs are a critical part of our infrastructure, so companies won't be held responsible if their people get sick there. Well, they're forced to go back to work there. They've got to choose between potentially catching a virus or losing their paycheck. Well, if we can't make the White House a safe workplace, how are we going to make any other place a safe workplace? So lots of questions.